Hey kids, welcome to episode 4 of Under the Hood. Today we're going to be talking about processes and the welding machine. We'll get way more into this, breaking down parts and all the parameters and stuff for each individual process down the road. But today we're just going to be teaching about people who know nothing about welding, the welding processes. The first one is what you've heard of as wire feed or Mig welding. Mig, maybe you can see this. MIG, so that's metal inert gas. This can also be called Smaw, gas metal arc welding. What it's doing is, you've seen them as this. Most common thing is a welding gun, as people would say, the Home Depot welder or anything. What it's doing is using the spool of wire to be the electrode, throwing the arc, and also filling in the puddle. Filling in the weld with its filler material, which is the metal pour wire. Wire feed is a bad term people use because it can be solid wire, but it could also be flux cord wire, which is actually FCAW, which is flux cord arc welding, which is technically a different process, and people put these two together and call it wire feed. So everybody keep that straight. The second one we're going to talk about, that was also, I'm going in the least difficulty and the most common process we use in the US and the world really now, is Mig Welding. Like I said, on each process we'll go into probably a month of information for each process. It's just endless amounts of information. So the second process is Smaw, SMAW, shielded metal arc welding. This is commonly referred to as stick welding, which your parents, your grandparents welded the world together with a stick welder. It's the cheapest way of welding, very good outdoor welding, and they look like this, which is kind of like this crab claw looking thing, and normally there's going to be a stick in here called the electrode. That's the stick in stick welding. They're used on the back of welding trucks more than anything, out in bad weather, wind, and once again we'll get into stick welding down the road. That's the second most common process in the world, and second to easiest in my opinion. The third process that everybody always wants to know about, and I did too when I first started, is Tig Welding. This stands for tungsten inert gas, otherwise known as GTAW, gas tungsten arc welding. And what that looks like is this guy right here, which is a Tig torch. And you've seen these on the internet throwing arcs of lightning and all that fun stuff. It's the coolest looking process. It's the cleanest process, best quality stuff you're gonna get, but there's a time and a place for it. It's a lot slower, which adds to a lot more expense on people's bottom end. But it's pretty much, if you know how to do it, it's everybody's favorite most of the time. Once again, very expert process. I'm 15 years in. I am by no means an expert TIG welder. I would consider myself an intermediate, okay TIG welder. But that's also a lot of how you're going to do your aluminum radiators, your really nice stuff on vehicles are TIG welded. But I mean, you can weld aluminum and stainless with a MIG welder if you really want to. If you really want to, You could weld those both with a stick welder and have a really filthy mess on your hands to clean up with a grinder, but it can be done. And once again, that sticking goes back to the 1800s really, but I mean, basically 1940 is where stick welding was really kicking ass, building our Liberty ships to get everything towards the war and stuff, is where you see just miles and miles of bead put out there. So those are the three, I believe, yeah, 3 or 3.5 most common processes you're gonna hear about as far as welding goes. Cutting, you're gonna have, you know, torch cutting with oxyacetylene torch, which is, once again, a time and a place. I'm not a big fan of it because it's really dangerous lugging around a bomb in the back of your truck, pretty much. And then it's been replaced by that thing, which is a plasma cutter. Plasma cutter, in my experience and personal taste, 100% better way to cut material, way more accurately. It's running on only electricity and compressed air. So a lot of people use a torch out in the field, which is true, but once again, you got open flames, you got a lot of gnarly stuff going on that with the technology of these now, and having air compressors on our trucks and in the welders now on our trucks, there's no reason not to be using this machine, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Everybody's got one. So those are your basic welding processes and cutting processes. And we'll see you next time. Like, share, subscribe. I keep forgetting to say that. I can never get paid for this, and you could never find out if I post new stuff if you don't like, share, subscribe. Thanks, kids.